Hello and what is up, YouTube? My name is G3Iron, and today we are 11 days, 3 hours, 15 minutes, and 8 seconds away from Path of Exile Legion 3.7 dropping for us. And I wanted to go over a couple of different things here today. Wanted to show off, first off, an aggregate that they're using, an aggregate forum post that they are presently using for PoE announcements for Legion League, which is great. They're doing it on this announcement thread, so that'll of course be linked down below for you in the video description, all of the various and sundry different links and things that we look at today will be, of course, linked down below in the video description. There are, of course, timestamps that are placed directly above my slightly balding forehead, and those are also hot linked for you down below in our video description, along with our web link to our Patreon page, which thanks so much to all of our monthly supporters on Patreon, and thanks so much to everybody that's a part of and participates in the G3 Discord channel. So there's been a lot of stuff that has come out over the last several days. As you can see, I've moved setups, so I've changed my setup a little bit. It's very, very warm in the region of the United States where I live in. So those of you that are not from the United States, if you're wondering why is it that occasionally I change backgrounds and I change where I'm at, it's because during the winter it gets rather cold, and so I usually use a different spot in my home for my gaming office, and then in the summer I use the lowest part of the house, the basement, which is much cooler and it's a lot more comfortable down here. So that explains why the backgrounds are different. All that being said, let's jump right into a couple of these spoilers. So first off, this is the most recent spoiler that we've gotten, and I shared this on our YouTube channel community page, and it was good to have some interactions on that and to hear some thoughts on this. So this is another Vaal corrupted keystone that comes with one of the new Legion jewels that can drop. If you socket it in a spot, it Vaals your passive tree, which upon first reading that for Legion utterly blew my mind. And this is what Power of Purpose changes to. This is how it reads. It reads 80% of maximum mana is converted to twice that much armor. Now, there's lots of different combinations here. The combinations that first came to my mind was simply, okay, if you're a mana stacking support guardian, this is just extra armor that you can have. Maybe there will be some ways in which we can share our armor and donate some more of our armor to our allies around us. So this potentially, I don't want to just say definitively it is a game changer because we don't have all of the uniques out yet. We don't have all of the patch notes out, obviously. But this is potentially a game changer for playing support with inside of Path of Exile, and even solo support builds, which those of you that don't know what a solo support is, it's essentially where you build yourself as much as possible with the support and you do just enough damage, thanks to all of your auras, that you can clear maps and do your own thing, but you still get to play as a support. So when your buddies and when your guildies are online, you can go and play map play, or you can group play in public parties. But a solo support is built in such a way that you can still carry yourself if nobody else is online, or you just want to do something that you need to do. Maybe you need to run a temple on your own, or maybe you want to run a particular map and a particular set of masters just for your own benefit rather than for others. So I think this has got some potential. Where it's located at the tree, it looks like it's all the way on the bottom left-hand side of the tree, so near the Marauder and Duelist area, which is quite a ways away if you are playing a Templar and a Guardian. So we'll see if it's worth it or not. That's why this is potentially a big deal, and it could potentially just be a whiff, because armor, the way how the mechanics of armor work, eventually you really hit some threshold where there's just massive diminishing returns on armor. So we'll see if this is a clue in to maybe that there's going to be some reworking of the way how armor works as a mechanic, although we haven't heard anything yet about that. Okay. Next is our Vaal passive, once again thanks to the new Legion jewels that will be available in PoE Legion League. This is called Dance with Death. This got a ton of discussion over the weekend on the G3 Discord, as well as on the G3 YouTube community page. And really, I think I need to point this out just mechanically, because I think there's some misconceptions that are going on, and so people are talking past each other. So with Dance with Death, it's got some serious downsides to it. All right, first off, it cannot use helmets. You just don't get to use a helmet. So similarly to when you use a Bringer of Rain, you don't get to use a chest piece, which that's a big downside in and of itself. When you use Dance with Death, You can't use helmets. So, some of the downsides that folks have already mentioned, and I'm sure we'll all discuss it down below in the comments below, but some of the downsides are that means that you lose out on potentially 4 socket slots, which a lot of builds need or can use an additional 4 sockets. It means that you lose out on a lab enchant, which regardless of whether or not that's an Uber lab enchant or not, it's still a lab enchant that could potentially be build defining for your build or a massive quality of life for your build. And then, of course, simply because you can't use helmets, it means that you're not going to get life or energy shield, armor, resistances, or other such buffs and abilities like enemies around you are, have got -9 or minus flat percentage to their elemental resistances. Nearby enemies have -9 fire, -9 cold, -9 lightning, etc. So that's a big deal. That is a big downside. We can't discuss Dance with Death without acknowledging, first off, that this has a big downside. The other thing that we have to acknowledge here that's pretty hilarious about this is literally an internal Easter egg meme where if you ever have heard the phrase hats off, right? Hats off for this. It's a way of acknowledgement, a way of showing respect, right? Like, hats off for this game design, right? Like, it's literally, you can't wear hats. So your character is literally taking their hat off for this design. So there's a little Easter egg, little funny business there. A little dad joke. Some of you already are probably going, "Oh, Iron, I can't believe you would fall for a dad joke. It's not even that funny." Yeah, well, I got 3 kids. I got to laugh at something, okay? So these dad jokes are the sorts of things that's all I've got to laugh at, man. I got to hold on to what I've got. So, getting into some of the benefits, okay? Some of the benefits. Your critical strike chance is lucky. Those of you who, again, are confused about what lucky is, lucky in Path of Exile means that it rolls your numbers twice for rolling and hitting on a critical strike chance, and it takes whichever one is the better. So you have better chance to crit, essentially, is what you have by having your critical strike chance being lucky. Now, the other advantage of Dance with Death is that your damage with critical strikes is also lucky, which means for those of you that are like already doing the math, right? This means that if you have a high flat stacking crit build that does a widely variant amount of damage, maybe it can roll very low or it can roll very high. I'm looking at you, all of you lightning damage players, whether that's elemental hit, whether that's lightning strike, whether that's, oh my goodness, whether that's arc, whether that's lightning trap, whether that's lightning arrow. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's a lightning skill, your damage with critical strikes is lucky, which means that while lightning in and of itself as a damage type has got the lowest possible rolls but also the highest possible rolls, this means that your damage is going to roll twice and take the better out of the 2 numbers on top of your critical strike chance being lucky. So you're getting to re-roll your crit chance twice, and you're getting to re-roll your damage twice. So you're going to have more consistent crits, and you're going to have more consistent higher damage output across the board. Another advantage to this is that you don't have to use a diamond flask. There's been a lot of discussion around this. I simply have to acknowledge that a diamond flask is not necessarily build defining, and this is a pretty steep price to pay, right? If this was just your critical strike chance was lucky, it really would not be worth it. It's like, oh, I get to replace a diamond flask. Who even cares, Iron? Like, that's not even worth it. I like using a diamond flask, and it's 1 flask slot for not being able to use my helm. Yes, that's a good argument. If that was the case, if it was just trading out diamond flask for a helm, nobody would do it. However, at the moment, in the game, there's no other way to get this line that your damage with critical strikes is lucky. That doesn't exist anywhere else in Path of Exile, and one of the things that has attracted many of us to play Path of Exile, I won't say all of us, because then one of you is going to drop me a comment down below, well, I wasn't attracted to Path of Exile because of that, but anyway, many of us, what's attracted many of us to Path of Exile is that uniques in Path of Exile are truly unique, that they're not just buffed rares, that they're not just build-enabling things that are cooler than rares, but rather that uniques are truly unique, and they give you mechanics that you can build around and play around with and attempt to min-max the hell out of. Right? That's one of the things that uniques can do in Path of Exile. Sometimes they're very, very interesting and they're build defining and they change the meta. Sometimes they're just like, that seems like a solid thing and it's got some solid stats on it. This is the first category. This can be build defining. This can be something that people are going to theorycraft with, play around with, and try out and see, okay, is this worth it? And what does this feel like in terms of the damage on critical strikes being lucky and your critical strike chance being lucky? My first instinct upon seeing this thing was, oh my goodness, I don't care if I can't use a helm. If I can use this on my starter build that just goes Lightning Trapper every single league, like my damage consistency skyrockets and I just blow everything up. And I'm already a Lightning Trapper, so I'm already blowing everything up on absolutely trash gear. On like a 3-link, I'm going through and killing Kitava. So it doesn't matter, right? Like in terms of the quality of life of gear, that part doesn't really matter. So there's lots of potential here. Now, the last line is also a downside. Enemies' damage with critical strikes against you is lucky. So, there's already a number of one-shot mechanics in Path of Exile. Of course, we all know that there are a number of various deadly mods. We actually covered those in one of our most recent videos, talking about Death Recap and talking about deadly mods that monsters can have on them. And of course, monsters that have got higher crit multi and higher crit chance are going to be very, very strong and very, very deadly. If you're running a map that's got some sort of insane crit multiplier on it, enemies' damage with critical strikes against you is lucky. In other words, the enemies, every time they crit you, are going to get to roll their damage twice, and they get to take the higher out of the two numbers against you. So, on the one hand, some folks are saying this totally kills this isn't viable, etc. When somebody says that, it probably means, hey, this isn't going to be like a hardcore option. This is a very deadly thing. It's not necessarily something that's going to keep your death count low and get you to push to level 100. That being said, as soon as somebody says that in Path of Exile, somebody else goes out and does it. Somebody else goes out and makes a build around something that somebody else says isn't viable and can't be done, and then they go and they do it. So, I just got to say, this looks really cool. I think it's fun. I think depending on how quickly and how accessible it is, this could actually be a meta-defining unique for this particular league, simply because if it's prevalent enough, if it's common enough, people may actually choose to use this if they're saying, you know what? My helmet's not giving me that much anyway, and if I'm going to get an Uber Lab enchanted helmet, that's like, depending on what the enchant is, it's anywhere between 2x to maybe 12x. It just depends on the league and depends on the meta. So if somebody's saying, you know what, I don't even care about my helm slot, I just want a bunch of spiked damage and I want that to be more consistent now, Dance with Death is a way to go about it. And you know what, I am going to reference the pointing to forehead meme because I referenced it over the weekend. If you're worried about getting hit by critical strikes, just don't get hit, right? A lot of Path of Exile in the meta and in the development of how to stay alive in Path of Exile now is going with a more skill-based gameplay approach, especially with animation canceling and with a lot more movement abilities that are allowing us to have a more fluid, that's some of the terminology that's getting thrown around out there, but a more fluid experience as you are engaging with combat. So, if you're worried about getting critted and blown up all the time from enemies, just don't get hit, right? So get better at the game. So there's going to be somebody out there that's going to do Dance with Death and make it work, and I'm excited to see what that looks like. Okay, our next feature that got revealed is that Rage is now tracked over the mana globe. This is pretty cool. One quick note on this. I don't have any clarification at the moment if this is going to get displayed in any way, shape, or form above your character. So in other words, if you just use the life pool above your character, if it'll be tracked there at all. Some folks have said, well, I really don't want to look at my mana pool. I just want to look at my character in the middle of the screen. I don't want to be distracted off to the side. So far, we've got no confirmation that there's going to be an ability to change that UI. So it looks like Rage is just going to be above the mana meter, and you're just going to have to deal with it. That's kind of a nice, cool thing. One of the visual effects that I'm worried about with this, just because Path of Exile does have so many cool different visual effects, Path of Exile has got a lot going on, and so adding more information for us to track with the UI sometimes can be difficult, and this almost looks too small to track. That being said, I haven't played a Berserker yet in 3.7. I haven't played something that takes advantage of the Rage mechanic in Legion, so it could be that we're making much to do about nothing, but to me this looks really, really small for us to be tracking and paying attention to. But if you're a Berserker, maybe just in the gameplay habits that you've already got, you're already going to be tracking it as it's over the mana. So maybe that's something that'll just come naturally. All right, next up is the Buried Treasure Divination card. This is great news for anybody that loves Delve, anybody that loves Nico, anybody that has any kind of potential for pushing depths for whether that's for particular, unveiled master crafting that you need to go down and get in Delve Depths, or if it's simply, hey, here's another divination card that's going to change the way how the economy works in Path of Exile and add another trading commodity. This can drop you, note, any kind of Sulfite Scarab. So this can drop the low tier, the mid tier, or the high tier Sulfite Scarab. So those of you that are wondering what the price value of it probably be, it will probably, depending on its turn-in rate, and probably somebody, either myself or somebody else that does crazy testing. There's lots of other YouTubers and streamers out there that do awesome, awesome testing. Slippery Jim is my favorite one that does all kinds of testing. He's probably going to go out and do something like this. That's not based on any inside information. That's just looking at it and going, hey, there's something that's to be data tested here. Jim will probably give it a shot and come up with a spreadsheet for it. So all that being said, Sulfite Scarab, we don't know the frequency of how good it's going to be, if it's going to be weighted in one particular direction or not. That being said, the impact on the economy is probably going to be early on in the league and relatively moving from early to mid-league, so within the first week to 2 weeks in softcore. This will probably range in value from the price of acquiring a mid-tier Sulfite Scarab to maybe just above a mid-tier Sulfite Scarab, to maybe just below the mid-tier of the Sulfite Scarab. It's not going to be cheap enough that you would simply purchase this and always break even. And it's not going to be rare enough. I'm saying this now. I really hope GGG's not watching this. It's not going to be rare enough that we never find it and never get to turn it in, and so nobody ever gets to farm it, okay? Hopefully this is on an actual map and an actual layout that Magic Find divination card farming builds can actually interact with, that it's fun, and that it'll drop and we can farm it to actually test it, okay? Please don't make this too rare. Please, for the love of God, don't make this too rare. We all like to farm divination cards, we being Magic Finders. Please don't make this too rare. Okay. Next up, speaking of divination cards, we've got a bunch more divination cards that are coming out. We also got the firm numbers. There are going to be 14 new divination cards created by supporters, and they've already revealed a few of them. But, of course, here are 6 more of them. There's Burning Blood, which gives you a Zoph's Blood, which, depending on the meta and depending on the particular mechanics that are prevalent in a particular league, Zoph's Blood can be incredibly build-enabling and worth a ton. Those of you that are looking at it and saying, oh, Iron, it's corrupted. That's going to mean it's worth less. Maybe it's going to be worth less, maybe, than an uncorrupted one. That being said, when you turn in your Burning Blood, the advantage of turning in corrupted divination card packs over simply getting an uncorrupted version of the same unique or item is that it's guaranteed to have a corruption on it. It's not going to brick because you've corrupted it. So that's a really great outcome, right? If you go and you buy a Zoph's Blood and you say, I'm really hoping to hit a particular corruption on this Zoph's Blood because I really need it, you've got to buy a bunch of Zoph's Bloods and then burn them up using your Vaal Orbs. It's not just that the price of that transaction is, oh, well, I've got to go buy, more Vaal Orbs. The price of the transaction is usually expensive because you got to keep buying Zoph's Blood until you hit one, right? You're going to keep bricking them into yellow rares that just aren't worth it. You're going to brick it into corruptions that necessarily aren't worth it. It's not that great of an outcome versus turning in a set of cards where you're guaranteed, hey, you're going to get the unique and it's going to be corrupted. So there's just a little bit of change there in terms of the economic value between turning one in and voling it yourself. It's a little bit less risky for you to farm the card and turn it in. Same thing is true for Echoes of Love. This is Fidelitas's Spike. However, notice this is a 2 implicit corrupted item, so maybe this will actually bring Fidelitas's Spike back as some sort of more viable option for leveling in for early game. Okay, Imperial Legacy is a 22-stack divination card that gives you a 6-link Imperial Bow, and the item level is 100, which means that it can hit tier 1 rolls across the board because the item level is high enough, and it's going to be 6-link. You're just going to have a 6-link bow, which is really, really nice. So people that are dedicated to whether that's solo self-found or simply crafting their own gear and farming their own gear using Magic Find and divination cards, once we find out where Imperial Legacy drops, it'll be very, very helpful for folks who are looking for a 6-link bow. It saves you a bunch of fusings and it saves you a bunch of jewelers, potentially. Unless, you've got that streamer RNG where you just use 7 jewelers on something and it's 6-socketed and like 3 fusings and you got it 6-linked. For the rest of us plebs, Imperial Legacy is a great card. Then you've got the Archmage's Right Hand, which grants you a Glyphic Prophecy Wand. Again, the note here is that it's item level 100, which means we can craft on this baby tier 1 suffixes and prefixes, which is great. Then you've got the Fool, which drops 20 orbs of chance. So those of you that are often and frequently hoping to chance your gear to get uniques, to get build-defining uniques, or maybe simply highly valued uniques in that league, in that particular league's economy, the Fool will be a way for you to do it. And the flavor text on this is great. Even the most learned man is a fool to his own fate, which is a fantastic line for how many people turn in divination cards and how we all use currency in Path of Exile when we actually use it for its stated purpose, right? All of us are essentially using Fool's Gold because none of the currency in Path of Exile, well, I shouldn't say none, the vast majority of the currency in Path of Exile is not a guaranteed outcome on what's exactly going to happen on the other side. There's a lot of RNG involved. And so getting 20 orbs a chance could be Fool's Gold. It could be that, hey, you chance a unique that's really, really valuable. Then we've got Vanity, which this was the last card that's been teased. This card is just absolutely crazy. It's a tabula rasa that's already been corrupted. This one, I'm not sure exactly how the price market is going to come out for this. And again, this one's a little bit different when we're talking about turning in Vanity versus turning in Burning Blood for Zoph's Blood. Zoph's Blood doesn't necessarily have the amount of risks and the amount of outcomes that a tabula rasa could potentially have when you're voling it. So the fact that it is a corrupted tabula rasa gives you a lot of options. I'm not sure if this means that Vanity is simply going to be, it's simply going to be cheaper to farm than Humility. We also don't know where this is going to drop. So whether or not Vanity becomes the foil to Humility and also drops in Blood Aqueducts, maybe it'll drop earlier in the game, maybe it'll drop later. I'm not sure. Of course, none of us are sure on the drop rates. And of course, we're all going to be excited during the first weekend as we start to discover the locations of these various cards and those get leaked and made public. But one thing that I wanted to talk about Vanity here, the artwork for Vanity versus Humility is really, really cool. In Humility, Ursha looks very, very well put together, and she is reaching out to what also looks to be like a well put together beast. And in Vanity, she's just like, her hair is distraught. She looks like she's been absolutely corrupted by chaos, and so does the creature that she's reaching out. So really awesome detail work there, of course, on the artwork for Vanity. So all of this is being aggregated on these forum posts. All of the new stuff is getting thrown out, whether that's on Twitter, whether that's on Reddit, whether that's through the official forums, or whether that's even through Discord. There's lots of different ways that Grinding Gear Games likes to release information about updating patches, about updating divination cards, about all the different teases that will come out. And of course, we right here on the G3 YouTube channel will be chatting, as always, whenever there's big news that comes out and delivering that big news on a platform where we all can chat about it right here on the G3 YouTube page. So thanks so much for watching. Go ahead and leave us a comment down below about what you're most excited about, if there's any of those particular divination cards that you are really hyped to farm, or if any of these passives are particularly exciting to you. Maybe I'm going to go play a Guardian this league. Is that even possible? I've got a couple of Guardians in Standard. Maybe the Guardian meta would actually come out of this. I think all of us would be shocked if a Guardian meta actually dominated Legion League. That would just be too weird, right? Anyway, leave us a comment down below about what you're hyped about with all of these various crazy Vaal passives, as well as the divination cards that are coming out for Path of Exile 3.7 Legion League. We're 11 days away. Get hype, everybody.
Nice patrons, yes, good patrons. They're so kind and supportive.
I can't believe you watched that thing. That was a good job. You did it. You got through the whole video. Yay.